Hey everyone, welcome to TV Guys. And before we get into everything, it's Brian's birthday. No, wait, it's my birthday. No, wait, it's both of our birthdays. Birthday month!
Yep. Even though we don't have the same birthday and our birthdays are not in the same month, it somehow works.
So we're recording the day before Brian's birthday,
Yep.
April 30th. Happy birthday, Brian.
Thank you.
And this episode is going to come out about around the same time my birthday is, May 17th. It's a couple days early. So happy birthday, me.
Yep. And we're born the same year, correct? I think.
88.
Yep.
Yep, we are both as old as each other.
Which means we will both be turning 33, the same age Jesus was when he died. So basically, we're Jesus.
I don't think that's how that works. If we both die this year and then come back from the dead 3 days later, maybe argument holds water. Apart from that, I don't know.
If that happens, we'll mention it on the podcast.
Hey guys, sorry we haven't been around. We died. Took a little bit of time off, and then we came back.
It'll be fine. We buffer 2 weeks ahead, so we're fine.
That's true. That's true. But it's not an unrealistic thing for that to happen, even though we have very realistic lifestyles. And guess what? As luck would have it, that's what we're talking about today.
That worked out really well for not having planned a segue at all.
You're welcome. I'm so good at that. My favorite thing is like really bad segues where someone's like, speaking of rectal thermometers, like, wait, what?
Speaking of segues, though, you know what popped in my head? Do you remember that viral video that was going around, chimpanzee riding on a Segway?
I don't remember that, but that sounds up my alley.
Yeah, it's just a dumb little song, just YouTube chimpanzee riding on a Segway. But keep in mind, it will get stuck in your head for the next. I first heard in 2009, so going on 12 years.
Whenever there's a viral video, I know you have a point real quick, but whenever there's a viral video, for some reason, I'm just like, nah, I don't want to watch it. I haven't watched the What Does the Fox Say video. It took me a long time to watch. What are some other ones? Like Gangnam Style. Like I didn't watch that for a million years. Or Rebecca Black's Friday. I didn't watch that. This is dating myself now, really. But there are some like everyone's talking about it. I'm like, I don't need to watch it. I know everyone's talking about it. I still haven't like watched Tiger King.
It's all right. Speaking of Rebecca Black's Friday, I believe if I remember correctly, at one point at Bethel, the church that me and Matt both used to go to, they did a spoof video of Friday to Sunday.
And it was terrible. Oh man. I mean, like it's one of those, it was purposely supposed to be like cringy, but this was before cringy was more mainstream and cool. So Paul, I'm sure you'll have something to say about that because you probably were the mastermind behind it. That's my guess.
I believe he was. I don't remember how much I was actually involved in it. I think I might have just been around.
I was just there. They're doing stuff, and I'm like, all right, guys, I guess we'll go with this.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, that is not what we're talking about today. We are talking about the most realistic TV shows. What do we mean? We mean shows that are supposed to take place in our reality, that they are all the same rules that you and I adhere to. They exist in this universe. It's not science fiction. There's not all this supernatural stuff. It's not super weird. It's all supposed to be normal. But yet, because it's a TV show, their version of normal can often be very detached from what actually happens. So I've got a couple picks that I'm going to talk about, and it's kind of funny, as luck would have it, I actually have like whole genres, and then I pulled out a pick from that genre that really fits. Because I mean, there's certain genres that's like no matter what the show is in that genre, it is not realistic at all. So I picked out the one show that I felt embodied that really well. So you kind of had a rating system that you said, Brian, or a way that you were going to go about this. And what did you say that was?
Well, simple things like disqualified. I disqualified cartoons because even the most realistic cartoons, they kind of go off the rails because they can. Anything, like I said, anything supernatural. If the premise of the show, like Third Rock from the Sun, aliens, like obviously there's some episodes that are more grounded than others. That's going to be disqualified. And even like anything Disney Channel, because even though with some of them are not supernatural in nature, it's the level of unbelievability where kind of if in the show like an alien popped up or something like that, and you wouldn't be surprised, it's probably not realistic enough.
That's such a great way to phrase it.
Yeah.
You're watching Boy Meets World, all of a sudden an alien walks in, you're like, yeah, this is okay.
That's another show. Like I would disqualify it for a lot of reasons for being unrealistic, but even though it has some realistic episodes, so you might
Yeah.
disagree. You might say that our picks are unrealistic, but there are picks, not yours. So
Yeah, I think the scene that pops up for me that best describes that is like in the college years, and then Sean has to share a room with Jack, I think, and like Sean has a pig in his closet, an actual pig.
yeah,
It's like that is probably the most unrealistic that show got. I feel.
yeah. I mean, Sean had a pig in like season 3. It was like a little piglet, and it's one of those things where like they never mention the pig again. We never see it again. Okay, fine. Like 3 years later, oh, I still have that pig. Like, no, you don't. You did not have that pig for the past 3 years. You brought it back for the convenience of the joke.
It did not go to college with you,
No.
Sean. All right. Well, Brian, we always let you go first because it's fun. So
Cool.
why don't you start us off, Brian?
Mine is a show that Matt has seen one episode of, and that is the IT Crowd.
I'm disabled.
Yeah. Because the premise of it, yeah, they just work in IT in the basement of this company. Like, that's fine. But first of all, the unrealisticness, I know there's some apathetic people at their job, but to the point where in any kind of real company, I think Moss would still have a job. But both Jen and Roy, which, okay, Roy is Chris O'Dowd, because you could never remember his name, would easily be fired. Because, first of all, Jen got hired. I don't remember how she gets hired. She doesn't know anything about computers. She didn't know how to access the internet on her laptop. So that's her level. She suddenly became the manager of the IT department. And then with Roy, it's shown that he knows how to do some stuff, but all he does is answer the phone saying, "Hello, IT, have you tried turning it off and on again?" Their office area is just like what you imagine a man cave dorm room. Like there's a couch down there. There's like all these shelves. It's like, immature teenage frat boy, not frat boy. They're cooler than these guys. Like nerd boys.
Nerd boy just sounds wrong. I'm a nerd boy. Okay.
Whatever you want to call it. And that's like, then they're just allowed to do whatever they want down there. Like I said, Moss is the one, he's the nerdy one, and he's the one who actually is like a computer genius. He knows how to do everything. He's really the only IT guy that they need. He's socially inept, but that part's not so unrealistic. Like Jen and Roy would never have a job there. And not only that, the boss, Douglas, I don't think you've seen Douglas because he wasn't in that episode.
No, I didn't.
First of all, he's completely openly sexually harasses pretty much everybody, and he's a complete idiot. He found a gun in his drawer because his dad was the boss. His dad jumped out a window, killed himself to get away from tax questions, and then Douglas came in at the funeral and said, "Hey, I'm back. I'm going to run the company." Just kind of getting gloss over that.
That's a choice.
But another scene with this, Douglas finds a gun in his desk. He pulls it out, and here's what it is. "Hey, I wonder if it's loaded." Sticks it in his mouth, shoots it 6 times. Oh, it's not loaded.
Jeez.
Despite my family or my wife's family being a hunting family, I'm not really a gun guy, but I don't think that's how you check if a gun's loaded.
No, that's the proper procedure. Make sure the safety's off too. It's kind of funny, like the way that you started with this, those couple things that you said are actually could be something like Jen getting into being like the IT lead without any sort of knowledge. People fall upwards all the time. So I mean, like
Yeah.
that's a fine premise. And Roy, the turn it on and off again, like, and you talk to any IT person, that's kind of what the joke is that fixes it 9 out of 10 times, because guess what? People are dumb and they don't do the basic, like your own test first or know to do that test. But you have a point so far about other things.
And I'm trying to think specific episodes, like the company. We don't really see a whole lot about the company. We just see the IT department, and we see the boss sometimes. The whole rest of the building, I'm not even exactly sure what they do. I mean, maybe if you watch enough, you can kind of figure it out. But it's not really touched upon because it doesn't matter. Like
Yeah.
Dunder Mifflin in The Office, there's a lot of references to them being a paper company. It kind of matters more in that sense. It doesn't
Mhm.
matter what Renum Industries, which is their company, does. All it is, okay, it's a workplace, and they're in the IT department. We're just gonna hang out with these guys, but
Yeah.
it's so funny.
Yeah. Yeah. Comedies, they really like they find their humor in the absurdity at times. It's hard
Mhm.
to find a comedy that's really grounded.
Yeah.
I mean, like the best I can think of is like I guess Everybody Loves Raymond is one that's pretty grounded, but still it's pretty ridiculous. Like who
Mhm.
actually will drive a car through a house? Who actually like is that smothering of their boy? Who
Yeah.
actually, as adults, live right across from their parents, even though that drives them nuts, and they still can't set up those boundaries.
You say that driving a car through the house is rare, but I mean, it happened on Full House and Fuller House and Gilmore Girls and Family Matters and Everybody Loves Raymond.
Oh, you're right. Then it is common. I take that back.
Real quick. So another kind of example of like a realistic premise that kind of gets blown out of proportion is Roy is dating this girl and he finds out that her parents died in a fire at SeaWorld. They call it Parks, but it's basically SeaWorld. And she's like so devastated. She's like, I'm not going to talk about it. It's too painful. And Roy spends the whole episode obsessing over how can you die of a fire at SeaWorld. And he's talking to Moss. He's like, nope, there's all stone steps. There's no wood. Like what could catch on fire? And he ends up making like a model of SeaWorld. And at one point he starts it on fire and as like it's blazing in front of him, he's like, okay, if they were there and the fire started there, then that's the only way they couldn't have escaped. Okay, so her parents must have been there. And like he's just so satisfied that he figured out how her parents died while his office is kind of starting on fire.
Yeah, that sounds right. That sounds like proper sitcom etiquette.
Yeah. All right, Matt, what
All
is your number three?
all right. Well, I'll stick with sitcoms and I'll hit on one that this was the only one I think you might have, and it's a
Yep.
very popular choice. So I'll talk about a popular show. So one of the genres that I want to hit on is how can they afford that?
Yep.
That sort of genre. And I mean, how many shows do you see that where it's like, oh, they live in New York and they're a struggling artist, but look at this huge apartment that they have
Yep.
in downtown Manhattan. I mean, yeah, it'll cost you like $500 to $600,000 per year to live there, but
Mhm.
so it's like you have a show that I think that really epitomized that, and that would be Friends, I would say. And
Okay.
so Friends was a great example of like, okay, this is a fun show and we enjoy the relationships, but there's so much about this that they even like will recognize a little bit. The one big one that they recognize and kind of call out is like in like later seasons when they're all talking about how their bosses hate them when they're hanging out at Central Perk,
Yeah.
and then Joey's like, well, maybe they hate you because it's 2 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon and you're all here instead of at work.
Yeah. And most of them have like Ross is like a professor at that point and Monica's a chef. Like they don't have jobs where you wouldn't be at the job at the middle of the afternoon. They should all be at work.
Yeah, maybe Monica because she would work nights. I can see that one, but Ross
Yeah.
would be a day guy. Chandler's a day guy. They're going to have a day job.
Yeah. And like with Chandler, until he goes to advertising, they kind of keep it and intentionally vague. They say, the transponster, like they give little hints. He does something with numbers, but they never actually tell us what he does. And so you can
Mhm.
kind of fill in your mind, okay, maybe he does make a lot of money in order to afford this stuff. But on top of that, he's going to pay for all of his bills and all of Joey's bills. And it's just like, how much money could he actually be making?
Yeah, and it makes sense for like those characters that they have a lot of money. I get it, but they go out of their way to show that the other three don't. There's one episode that I actually really like that episode, and I like how they tackled this, and it wasn't like a serious dramatic
Yeah.
thing, but they really addressed it because there was a time when they like the three, Ross, Chandler, and
And
Monica,
Monica.
were
Yeah.
all like, hey, we're gonna go out for dinner or we're gonna do something special for our birthday or whatever. And then they leave, and then Joey, Rachel, and Phoebe are like, we can't keep going out. We can't afford the things that they can afford. They've got these
Yeah.
great jobs, but we can't do that. And so then the others realize, after they're confronted by this, the other three that had the good jobs, they're like, oh, we've been kind of selfish. So then they like kind of go the other way and do like a little bit of a pity thing, where it's like, well, we'll just eat and we'll buy all the steaks, we'll buy an eggplant for you,
Yep.
Phoebe. And then it's like the opposite. It's like, dude, we don't need your charity. We just don't want to, we can't afford to go out all the time, but we don't want you to pity us.
Yeah.
And so I really liked that episode, because it was a really
Mm.
good look into something realistic with them. But if you have that as the realism, you look at every other episode and it
Yep.
doesn't track. Like, they cannot afford these apartments. Between the six of them, there are 4 apartments that they have at one point, where
Yeah.
Phoebe, we don't even see Phoebe's apartment a lot of times. But it's like
Mhm.
Phoebe has her own, Ross has her own, and then there's the 2 that are right next door to each other. Like, there's
Yeah.
no way that the 6 of them can afford those 4 apartments in the city.
And they're all like very well furnished apartments. Aside from, I mean, there's the brief couple episodes after Joey and Chandler get robbed when all they have is a canoe. But even when it's like the bachelor apartment, yeah, the furniture might not match, but everything looks nice. It's not like in college when me and my roommates found a couch without any cushions on the side of the road, and we took it and shoved an extra mattress in there. Like, it's not like that level. They all have nice, good furniture.
Yeah, and it's like all the couple of the ones that we see, there's 2 bedroom, then they
Mhm.
have a nice kitchen.
Yeah.
Well, Monica's one has a nicer kitchen than
And
Joey and Chandler's, but still,
yeah.
it's a pretty big size kitchen. They both have a bathroom, of
Mhm.
course, and so it's like, it's not like they're small. There's like multiple bedroom with all this sort of stuff. I had pretty much a 1-room apartment in the Twin Cities shortly after I got married, and it was just one very, very small room,
Yeah.
and then there was like a little bit of room on the other side of a wall for a bedroom that really wasn't that big, and then the bathroom was like, you couldn't really even turn around in it, and the
Yeah.
kitchen was almost like a hallway. Like, that was my it's probably like 200 square foot at best, and we had to pay $650 for it. That's the most I've ever paid for any living arrangement that I've ever had, even with my mortgage that I have right now. That's the most I've ever paid for living in the city, and that was tiny compared to these apartments.
Yeah. And they try to hand wave it because they say that Monica's grandmother had bought the apartment years ago and it was rent controlled, but kind of a cheap hand wave because that doesn't explain all the other apartments. Like,
Yeah.
Monica's grandma didn't own Phoebe's apartment.
Yep. Yep. And they had, every now and then they would get another roommate or something like that to help with the cost, but that was only really to serve the plot more than it was to be like, we got to explain how they can afford this. Like Joey's one roommate that he got, that he started having a crush on for a couple episodes,
Oh
you
yeah,
know, like that one.
Janine, right?
I don't remember the name, but whatever name you say, I'll be like, yeah, that sounds right.
Yep. All right. Do you have any more on Friends?
That's it.
Well, mine can kind of transition because part of it is how can they afford the apartments, which is How I Met Your Mother.
Yep. And that is in that same category in my mind. But
Yeah, because that apartment, the living space, I think those apartments are even more huge than the
yeah,
Friends apartment. That whole living space is they have parties with like 30 people. Like, Matt, can you imagine having a party with like 30, 40 people in your Minneapolis apartment?
I can't even imagine that in our house that we have.
Yeah, exactly. Same with our house now. And again, they have at different times they have better jobs. Like Ted always kind of has an okay job because he starts out the series as an architect. Marshall
Yep.
goes through points where he's unemployed. Lily, we find out, is like drowning in debt,
hmm
and
Robin does pretty well. Barney, for sure, of course, does
yeah.
really well.
But even that, they kind of bring that to a cartoonish level because, again, they purposely don't, kind of like Chandler, they don't tell us what Barney does, and we never actually
Yep.
see him actually having to ever work. I think they explained at the end that his whole job was just to be around and turn in his company for all their illegal doings.
Yeah.
But for whatever that is, they pay him so much money. They make a joke towards the end. They play jokes on it in the final season. It's one of the things I actually liked about the final season when they
hmm
say like, "Oh, I spend a crap ton on suits," and because they filled in the word crap ton with whatever number it was, and they
Hmm.
say like they find out when gets a job, oh, we'll pay you 65 crap tons a year or whatever. So it's like, yeah, Barney can afford it, but why can Barney afford it?
Yeah.
And the other one is an issue that other sitcoms have had too, is all the women for Barney and Ted, not so much Marshall, because Marshall obviously was dating Lily and marrying Lily the whole time. But you see in sitcoms, people date and hook up with so many women. Like
Yeah.
every episode, it's a new one. And you might think, oh, How I Met Your Mother has a built-in plot hole device with the unreliable narrator because it's Ted telling his stories from the future. So you could
Sure.
always say anything that doesn't line up, oh, it's older Ted misremembering the story. But at the same time, you got to realize he's telling the story to his young teenage kids. Is that who you're going to embellish your dating and sex life to?
Yes, it is. And I mean, like, that's even another thing of how unrealistic it is like, you're not going to be like, hey kids, let me brag about this threesome I had with these girls or whatever. It's like, you're not going to do that to your kids. I don't care how old they are.
Yeah.
Maybe when they're adults, you might bring it up, but not to be like, let me tell you an intricate detail about
Yeah.
the sexual stuff.
Oh yeah, they censor smoking pot into eating sandwiches, but like, hey, I went to a strip club on Thanksgiving, and was that your mom? Haha, that's a funny joke. Like,
Or like the implication of stuff of like the glitter that like pops out on the
yeah,
one of the strip clubs. Oh,
it's
gross!
yeah,
I just kind of gross myself out.
yeah.
Uh,
So yeah, How I Met Your Mother is like it's got the friends problem of they cannot afford this. Everything's huge, and just why within the framing device, why are we getting all this detail?
yeah, I'm going to make up numbers here because I don't remember the exact numbers, but I'm going to try and get as accurate as I can remember. But the thing that you brought up about like the let's just say the looseness of women problem.
Yeah.
I don't realize even the looseness of anyone, to be honest. But like you look at a show like Seinfeld, and I read online like someone that had tallied up the amount of partners all of them had had, and to come find out someone like George Costanza, who you'd think like would maybe have sex with two people in his lifetime if he's lucky, like that he had something like 10 times the amount of partners that we saw on this show, 10 times more than the average person will have in their entire lifetime.
Hmm.
And that's only over the course of like the 6 or 7 years we see him.
And I get it because love stories and that stuff it drives plot forward, and you're willing to just throw a blind eye to it.
Mm-hmm. You got it. How I Met Your Mother. Anything else with that?
Nope, that's all I had for that.
Okay, sounds good. So next category I want to talk about, my number two here category, is going to be law shows. Now there is one example, or there's one exception that I can think of a law show that's actually pretty realistic in terms of just how they treat courtroom proceedings and the job of a lawyer, and that's Better Call Saul. I've sung
Okay.
its praises plenty of times on here,
Yep.
but when it first came out, there was Michelle's cousin, which is also my cousin,
Yep.
is a lawyer. And so he was talking about the show and he was watching it, and he's just like, this show, I was so surprised at how much they got right. I'm like, yeah, that's absolutely what I would do in this situation. That's how I'd proceed. And it makes sense that law shows and law movies do embellish a lot on the legal proceedings to make them more dramatic, because like 90% of your job or 95% of your job is not trials. It is the arbitration. It is drafting up documents, reading through documents, a lot of document reading and prep, and then a lot of just like negotiation with judges and working out plea bargains and plea deals. Like so many cases do not end up making it to trial.
Hmm.
And that's not as exciting as like those big high stakes reveals. So I'm going to bring up an oldie but a goodie that a lot of people probably haven't seen, but you might have heard of. A show called Matlock from like 40 years ago.
Yep.
Now, Matlock is a great show. It's Andy Griffith as a lawyer. He's like this high profile lawyer. He's like got this astonishing price tag, but like you bring him in and he wins. Like that, this guy doesn't lose cases. And his whole thing is that like he would always have these surprise witnesses. He'd
Mm-hmm.
always confound the opponent with like, but look at this evidence that I have. Like he'd bring it out. Well, there's something called discovery in the world of law where you
Yeah.
have to make known what evidence that you have against the people that you are, if you're the defendant or if you're the plaintiff, that like the evidence you have against the defendant. And so you have to make that available. And so Matlock is an egregious example of just like how this is incorrect. And it's kind of funny because like there are some really good examples. And in fact, the movie, if you've ever seen it, My Cousin Vinny, is
Heard of it.
actually hailed. It's hailed as like the most accurate lawyer movie ever in existence. That like every single thing that they do in the movie is exactly what you would do as a lawyer. And actually, when the movie came out, there's one thing that they did get wrong, but the laws had changed after the movie came out that retroactively made that be the best course of action. So
Mm-hmm.
everything that they do in the court, in the trial, is absolutely accurate of how a lawyer would proceed. So
Yeah.
Matlock does like none of that, or like a tenth of what you would actually do. Now, does it make a good TV show? Of course, because
Mm-hmm.
that's at the end of the day, that's what you want. But is it accurate? No, not by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah. And some of that stuff, I think it's different if, like you said, only a lawyer would know this, or only whatever positions, jobs being shown would know this. If it's blaringly obvious to everybody, this isn't how this would go. I think that's kind of the line, and I'm
Yeah.
more willing to forgive it if it's like I'm not a lawyer. Like it makes sense, and I've heard enough people say that that's not how like courtrooms go. But if I hadn't heard that from people, or like with you telling me this right now, I wouldn't know.
Yeah, it's like so many shows do this. So many shows and movies, they're guilty of this. It's few and far between that actually take their time to be able to write a compelling courtroom drama
Yeah,
that actually is,
yeah.
to the letter of the law.
It's somewhat related, somewhat random, but just a little bit into season 2 of Cobra Kai.
Mhm.
And one thing I'm noticing, okay, Johnny Lawrence would have been arrested so many times. You can't just go around in the daily world, in life, just punching people at random and punching children without consent forms from their parents, and like everything's just fine. I don't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wait till like the end of the season when like it really just keeps ramping up and up and up, and see what
Yeah.
happens.
All right. Is that what you have? Is that all you have for your number 2?
That is it. I didn't go into detail because I know I don't have a lot of Matlock fans out
Yeah.
here. I don't want to bore you guys. I just wanted to bring it up.
I think we have exclusively Matlock fans.
We might. If you like Matlock, then you comment and let us
No,
know.
if you don't like Matlock, comment. That way, when no one comments, we will know that nobody doesn't like Matlock.
That's true. Look at you with your double negatives. You got them.
I gotcha. All right. So next is a show that I've brought up, and it's one that we found out that Matt doesn't watch, which is Cheers. So,
Okay.
premise of Cheers, Sam owns a bar. He's got his regulars. Stuff goes on. That's realistic right there, and it's not unrealistic that Sam owns the bar. I don't think, because his backstory is that he was a professional baseball player, and then he kind of went through a rough patch with alcoholism, and then now he's sober, but he owns a bar. But there's some stuff going around, kind of like the Friends problem, where okay, most of these guys have jobs, but they're hanging out at the bar all the time. Frasier's a psychologist or a psychiatrist, one of those, and he's constantly hanging out at a bar when he's not, at his prestigious job. Cliff Clavin is a mailman who's in his postal worker uniform, sometimes with a bag of mail at the bar. Pretty sure that's illegal. You're not supposed to be openly drinking when you're in your, like, because technically it's a government worker uniform.
Sure.
And then Woody Harrelson comes in season 4, and he works at the bar. That's fine, but then all of a sudden it's one of those unrealistic things where he jumps into politics and he becomes like a city councilman or a senator or something, and it's like, yeah, that Woody would not be a senator.
Yeah.
But the main thing that makes Cheers unrealistic within realism is the character of Norm. Do you know? So Matt, do you know anything just from hearing about Cheers about Norm?
Is that George Wendt's character?
Yes.
A little bit about it, that like he's really like the alcoholic, like
Yeah.
the actual alcoholic of the group.
Yeah, so he's never shown as drunk. We never see him. He'll thing is that he basically lives at the bar to the point where I was looking up clips to in preparation. There's one
Mhm.
clip where he comes in and somebody's sitting in his seat, and they're like, "I was sitting here," and he's like, "Well, I was sitting here like yesterday and the day before. Since the Ford administration, I've been sitting there." And like they're trying to talk to them. It's like, "Oh, what do you do, Norm?" "I sit there."
That's nice.
And
I like George Wendt. He's funny.
yeah, he is. And through most of the time, Norm is unemployed. Like every now and then, Norm will have a job. He's shown that he has some accounting background, but whenever Norm has a job, it's a plot line. Otherwise, Norm's just known as he's just kind of the lazy bum who sits there. First of all, even though he's unemployed, he comes to Cheers every day wearing a suit and sits at the bar hour after hour drinking beer, racking up an outrageous bar tab. Okay, I don't care if your friend owns the bar. I can see maybe your friend like sliding you a free beer or something like that. But it got to the point where Sam, like at one point the bar burned down because after so many years you need outrageous storylines.
Mhm.
And Norm's like, "Oh no, that means my bar tab got burned up." And Sam's like, "No, I actually keep your bar tab in a fireproof safe because I consider it my retirement plan." Like that's how many beers every day, like thousands and thousands of dollars of beer that he owes, and no one ever calls him on it. No one ever says, "Oh yeah, you owe us like so much money. We're not going to serve you anymore." Actually, Kirstie Alley did that once when she owned the bar. She did that for an episode. But overall, yeah, this first of all, this guy would get cut off. This guy could not afford to just sit at the bar and be all the time. And if he was just sitting at the bar unemployed, he wouldn't come in wearing a suit. And it's just kind of this one character. When you really look at it, you don't notice it because everything else is going on. But you really take a look at Norman Cheers, it just doesn't make sense.
I think the suit thing I would give a pass. I think everything else that from what you're saying, I would agree with you. But I think the suit thing, like that kind of even fits of like I don't have anywhere else to be and I want to keep up a look and I want to keep up a presentation that doesn't specifically say I've given up, even if maybe
Yeah.
as depressing as it is, he's given up.
Mm-hmm.
And suits were a lot more commonplace even 20, 30 years ago
Oh
that
yeah,
like
for sure.
people wore them a lot more than they do now.
Yeah.
So I would give a pass on that, but I think all your points I definitely get and agree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, and the show is made, and to me, is made by Norm, and he's the one. Every day he comes in, and everyone screams Norm, and he has some sort of funny quip to the point where this point there's an episode where after Kirstie Alley bought the bar, and they're trying to kind of con her into hiring Sam back, and they're all trying to pretend like they don't work there, and then Norm comes in, and only one guy goes Norm, and he's like, "Not today, you idiot! I'm supposed to be a stranger."
I like that.
Yeah.
That's good. I should watch some episodes of Cheers sometime.
Yeah, I think I've decided that the next time we do one of those where we give each other an episode, I'm probably going to give you a Cheers episode.
Okay, I need to figure out what show I would give you next, but we might not do one of those for a while.
Yeah, I want to finish Cobra Kai and Better Call Saul first.
Yep, I want to finish Mr. Robot.
I've heard that's good.
Yeah, it's very Fight Club esque. It's definitely got that same energy
Okay.
of like anarchy and destroy, like rally against the man and free the people, and and got like that same feel of like the dark. I wouldn't say either one of these are dark comedies, but there's like a dark look at
Yeah.
life in them. So I'm gonna detour real quick just because you brought something up and it it made me think of something else. I'm not gonna talk too long about this one before I get to my final one.
Okay.
But you talked about Woody Harrelson doing like a city councilor thing, and it just brought me to This Is Us. And it's like This Is Us. It's billed as like this is so relatable, and there's a lot of things that are, and there's a lot of like realistic stuff. But one thing that Angie and I laugh about so much is like the the way that they talk is especially like because you can tell like this is a more democratic show and it's more geared towards liberal and progressivism, and it's kind of funny the way that like every single person responds to kind of a liberal idea with like oh yeah, of course that's how it is. Like there's never any disagreement. There's never like someone's like pronouns, these are my pronouns. Like there's never like a I don't believe that, like how you might have it in a normal conversation, but it's kind of just like, of course that's how it is. Of course that's that. Like they get into this whole like this is of course 100%, and it's not even so much like I'm against that. It's just it's so PC though. No
Yeah.
one talks that PC like in life,
Mm.
even if they truly believe it. They're not like that after school special of like, yes, this is how we should talk. And when we talk about our feelings, we should tell you that I'm feeling this way. It's like, you guys aren't in therapy. You don't need
Yeah.
to talk like you're in therapy right now. Although
Yeah.
Randall went through therapy, so I don't know, maybe he is.
I think the refreshing kind of bit in there is whenever they show Uncle Nicky, which I wish they would show him more, because he's not against all this stuff, but he's like, a boomer, like a literal boomer, and he
Yeah.
has been living on his own in a trailer, so he just doesn't know how like modern society works. In that episode with him, he shows, I forget what her name is, but the girl that lives by him, he's like, "All right, I need you to explain to me very very detail how I use my computer to order something off Amazon." Like,
It's similar. You brought up Cobra Kai. That's one thing I really like about Johnny Lawrence's character, like him trying to figure out technology.
oh
I
yeah,
love that so much.
and he's like so stuck on his ideals of what makes you cool as a teenager in the 80s still should make you cool now. And he's like, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't look at computers. I'm not a nerd. And he's not joking. Like he literally thinks that.
Yeah. I would say, one of the most recent episodes in This Is Us is Felicia Rashad.
Yeah.
She's a guest star right now, and she's plays Beth's mom. Her character would not be the type that is progressive. Like just the way her character's written, she
Yeah.
wouldn't be progressive. Like she's kind of in this spot with Beth where she's like, of course these are the pronouns we use. Beth, I'm a modern woman. I know these things. Like I would believe that she would believe she's a modern woman. I really just don't think that her generation of being that type of woman, the way that they're portraying her, that she would be the way she is on that show. It just kind of takes me out of it to feel like there's no one that will talk about that and like have the actual earnest conversations instead of like, this is how we need to be. This is how we need to talk. Okay.
Yeah. When it comes to progression with especially with people in that generation, you get a lot more realistically, you get a lot more Pierce Hawthorne's who thinks he's streets ahead.
Yes. It is funny sometimes, like those people who are just so oblivious but think that they're not. Like, I love the blacks. Like, maybe you don't say it like that. Or like Annie is like, maybe you should use the whole word instead of Jew.
Oh, you mean Jewy?
No one was talking to you, Jew. I said use the whole word. Oh yeah, no, you're right. Pierce is a lot more common than maybe we would like.
Yeah.
All right, but my real pick was in the realm of medical dramas. Now, medical dramas, there's a lot of give and take. There's sometimes where they really do a great job of looking into diseases. I think like House does a really good job of looking at really interesting ways that a disease can present itself, but because it's House and because it's really interesting stuff, they are really out of the box of like all of these random once in a lifetime sort of diagnoses all happen to this one team. But that's not even the pick I'm going with. I'm actually going with Grey's Anatomy, because sure, they might have a lot of the medical stuff that they do understand. I don't know a lot about that side of it. There's a little bit that people pointed out is like, no, they wouldn't do this. That definitely wouldn't happen. But it's not even that. It's the drama of Grey's Anatomy that is the most unrealistic. Like this show, honestly, is the reason why we're doing this episode with this theme, because it is so unrealistic of a show. It is so high school drama. It is so like no one is going to go through. These poor people, they have dealt with death, they have dealt with drownings, they have dealt with their hospital blowing up, they have dealt with plane crashes, they have dealt with a active shooter at their hospital. The actual death rate on the show is 1/3 of all people die on the show. 1/3 of all patients that they work with. You know what the
Dang.
actual rate is for a hospital? It's somewhere between like 3 and 7%. And this hospital is actually billed as like one of the top hospitals in the world. And they have one of the characters at a point does a TED talk. The other points, they're like leading their field in some of this research and some of the things that they know. And so they're supposed to be so prestigious, but yet all these people are dying at their hospital. They can't save people. They had someone who came in and had the hiccups and she died because they had something undiagnosed when she came in just for the hiccups. It's so out of it, like no one goes through this much trauma, and then they
Yeah.
keep carrying on without therapy. Guys, guess what? You would need a lot of therapy if you survived all of these things.
Mhm.
No one can handle that much stress. You know how many people would quit and leave that city? They would think that it's cursed. You're telling me that there's not one person who's like, our hospital is haunted, I cannot be here anymore. Like they would leave in a heartbeat. There is no way that this is realistic in any sort of endeavor. No one has a life that is this dramatic. And if you have a life that is this dramatic, get out of it, because you're like bringing drama on yourself. You must be this target. And by the way, these characters, they are also so all dramatic. And so they need to not be around each other. They need to find some people that are chill and calm and being like, man, let's just take each day as it comes. Let's just one day at a time. Let's not be uppity about one thing that someone says and make that into this huge crisis. It's so bad. And the love triangles and the relationships, every single relationship is bad. Every relationship ends. People get married, people get stood up at the altar. There's one episode where someone's getting married and someone's like, oh, I do have something to say, and then they run out of the chapel together. He steals the bride. That doesn't happen in real life. No one does this, man. No one has a marriage like Meredith and Derek. They don't have a relationship where it's like, let's put our marriage license on a post-it note and that's our marriage. We're going to say that that's what it is. No one has these sort of there would be so many HR claims. The HR department of Grey's Anatomy is probably overflowing with complaints of sexual harassment. You can't go into a janitor's closet without bumping into people making love, and you'd be like, excuse me, I just need to get a thermometer back there, and like, yeah, go around us. Like, people are constantly sneaking off to make out and do all this other crap. It's a terrible place to be, and I don't understand why people think that this is something worth emulating. Why they are like, I loved this show so much and I want my life to be like Meredith. You don't want that, guys. You don't want it.
Okay, I gotta admit, when you told me about this premise that you really wanted to do for this episode, I was like, okay, I thought it seemed a little odd. Totally worth it to hear that rant of yours. I feel like we found your like energetic preacher voice, expecting you to like jump into an altar call.
I didn't have any of that written down apart from Grey's Anatomy.
Well, I could tell.
The anger just came out.
Yeah. So, but from everything you're saying, yeah, it seems like every trope I've seen, like in movies, like it's all unrealistic. It's not how any of it works, and I get that, especially the whole breaking up a wedding thing. Have you ever been to a wedding where they even asked, does anybody object to this wedding?
I'm performing a wedding this summer. I should ask for that. And I should just like purposefully have a really long pause and then even like start pointing at people like, did you, did you say, I thought I saw a hand. Okay.
I feel like if you know the humor of the bride and groom, that could be really funny.
I do know their humor. I think that they would find that funny. And I think I actually might do it. That would be fun.
Okay, you need to report back on the podcast how it goes if you do that.
Okay, I will.
Yeah, but a lot of medical stuff too, and it kind of is with the lawyer thing, because realistic medical drama is probably not nearly as exciting as you think it is. You think, ooh, like yeah, life-saving stuff, but I think a lot of it's just like, okay, here's your paperwork. We're gonna do this. You're gonna go into surgery. You're gonna come out. It's gonna be fine. Like, it's not like a soap opera.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, your HMO doesn't cover this. See ya.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely a lot of paperwork. There's like 6 hours until you're able to see the doctor. You come in and then you got to wait and wait and wait.
Yeah.
Oh, and they break the law so many times in this show. They violate doctor-patient confidentiality. They violate insurance stuff because they're like, we have to make sure that this person gets this for, even though their insurance doesn't cover it. So we're going to use this person who just died, and we're going to say it's their insurance. And we're going to like they have all these arcs. And actually, what happens a couple times is people do get fired, but they don't go to jail. They don't lose their medical license, which you actually would do in real life if this sort of stuff came out. Why? Because they're all so interconnected, and because the chief of medicine had like this thing with Meredith's mother way back when, a long time ago, and then now because of that, she has like these strings she can pull or something. I don't know. It's stupid. This show is stupid, and I watched like 7 seasons of it. If you're a Grey's Anatomy fan, I'm sorry. It's stupid. It got out of hand. It got way out of hand.
Yeah. Just the other day, I took my son to the doctor for his checkup, and you know what happened? Nothing happened. No one rushed in with the bloody hand. They didn't call him back and say, "Oh, we found this rare blood disease." Nothing happened. You know what happened? I sat in the waiting room texting my friend Mike about the podcast, and then they came out. All right, you're done, and then we left.
Did 2 doctors come out of the janitor's closet and like hurriedly tuck their shirts back in or something?
Well, yeah, but that happens everywhere.
Oh yeah, everywhere you go, no janitor's closet is safe.
Exactly.
That makes you sound like a predator. Like wherever Brian's at, you stay away from him, and especially janitor's closets.
Correlation is not causation.
I really want to be clear on this. I think I need to highlight this a couple more times, guys.
I don't even know what else to say. I think you said everything in here.
But you brought up Mike, and I brought up Grey's Anatomy, and
Yep.
I wanted to combine the two because you told me some of the text of the episode we talked about of like the saddest moments, and I talked about a Grey's Anatomy moment, and Mike really appreciated it. He doesn't even watch the show, but the way I described it, like he was able to really emotionally connect. So Mike, you got to tell me, the way I described Grey's Anatomy tonight, were you able to emotionally connect in a completely different way? I hope so.
Yep. This has actually been a good week for feedback, not on our social medias, but by texting me. Because my friend Mike was catching up in the podcast, texting me about it. My sister and her husband both texted me that they liked our most recent episode that came out. So if you want to, you can always get in hold of us. Either texting us or TV Guys 1 on Twitter, tvguyspodcast@gmail.com, or TV Guys on Facebook.
All right, let's get into trivia. What was last week's trivia question?
Oh, yes. It was about TV moms. I talked about there's a mother and daughter in real life who both played the same character. And that is Laurie Metcalf, who was most famous for playing Jackie on Roseanne and the Connors, who had a recurring role in The Big Bang Theory as Sheldon's mom, Mary Cooper. And then in Young Sheldon, which obviously, is a prequel, goes back to Sheldon's childhood. Sheldon's mom is played by Laurie Metcalf's daughter, Zoe Perry. So both versions of Sheldon's mom are related to each other.
And Laurie Metcalf came really close to winning an Oscar a few years ago for Lady Bird. She did a really good job in the movie Lady Bird. I don't know if you ever saw it, but there was no stopping Allison Janney for her role in I, Tonya, who she also played a mom. Like both of them in the movies, they played like this overbearing mom. Yeah. And they played very different versions of an overbearing mom, but they both did really good, except for Allison Janney. She knocked it even more out of the park than Laurie Metcalf. So
nice.
Makes sense. Well, it's been a little bit since we've had what I like to call a softball question for trivia. And so, Brian, you've asked a lot of these trivia questions. I'm like, I have no idea. I don't even know. So I'm going to ask a question that I feel like a lot of people might know, especially if you're a Friends fan. So I'm going to ask you a Friends question. I think a lot of people, if you've seen Friends, you're going to get this question because it's one of my favorite questions. It itself is a trivia question from Friends. Okay. And that question is, Chandler Bing receives a magazine from TV Guide, but it's addressed to what name? It's a great joke. I love the joke. It's a fun moment in the
It's
show.
it's from my favorite episode of the show.
That might be my favorite. No, it's I'm sorry. My favorite is the when like they're trying to show that they like that they've caught Chandler and Monica when
Oh,
Phoebe and
yeah.
Rachel find out, and then
That's
it's like
another
kind
really
of
good
that
one.
like yeah the Phoebe and Chandler like let's flirt, we're gonna have sex together, blah, ha, ha. That whole thing is just
Yeah.
hilarious.
One of the best parts of that is at the very end, Joey's like, finally, nobody knows. Everybody knows. I don't have to keep a secret. And like, oh, actually, Ross doesn't know. He's like, are you kidding me?
My sister.
Well, he found out like either the next episode or the one after, I think.
I think it was in the end part of that episode because he was looking at the other apartment,
Oh, yeah.
and because that's how it started. He brought them over to that apartment to look
Mm.
at it, and then like he was moving in and he sees them across. And then the next episode is and I like that episode starts with a really funny line that or a couple lines
Oh,
when
yeah.
like Ross is storming up and the door is locked or the chain is on for the first time in forever, and
Yeah.
he's trying to get in he's like, wait, or Monica, Chandler, I saw you guys, and Joey's like, what's going on? And Chandler's like, I think Ross knows about me and Monica. And
Yeah.
Joey's like, dude, he's standing right there.
Yeah. Well, and then I don't know if you're going to talk about this next, but you're jumping on. Ross is like, oh, my best friend and my sister. And he switches because you realize they're actually like in love and not just hooking up. He's like, my best friend and my sister. Like,
Yeah, I like that too. That was a great arc that they did of the Joey knows first and them finding out together and
yeah.
then everyone else finding out. There's a
Yeah.
lot of really funny parts in that.
Yeah. I agree.
All right, well, hey, that's it. We've gone quite a bit. We've talked about a lot of
Yep.
stuff. So, hey, make sure you wish me a happy birthday because it's already been Brian's birthday. He got to have the house to himself for several hours. That is the dream for a dad and a husband, to be able to be by yourself for just a couple of hours.
Yeah. You better not have jinxed it because that's not going to happen until tomorrow when we're recording it.
if I jinx it, just give me a call. Matt, you moron.
I'm going to send my kids to your house.
Don't do that. We're busy enough. We got 4 of our own. But hey, that's been it. It's been fun. Hopefully you had a great Mother's Day. Hopefully you had a good birthday. And I'm gonna have a great birthday in a couple days. That'll be
All right.
awesome. Until next time, I'm Matt.
I'm Brian.
I remind you to stay tuned and keep watching